Due to popular demand, I'm back with a Part 2 follow-up of more games with the best graphics on the Atari Jaguar. Same as in Part 1, this list isn't meant to be considered as the best games necessarily on the system, but rather intends to highlight some of the great 90s vintage eye candy on the console. So whether you call it the Jaguar, or Jaguar, join me in this Retro Gaming Boss retrospective and take a trip down memory lane of more visually stunning games that showcase the visual capabilities of this console. Alright, so what's in a name? Let's keep it simple. I'm just gonna call it the Jag from here on out, okay? Before we dive into it, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is always here for a quick retro gaming break whenever you need it. I appreciate your support, since it's the only way YouTube will highlight my videos. Despite the Jag's relatively short original lifespan and limited game library, it boasted some pretty sharp visuals and leading-edge technology for its time, pushing the boundaries of both 2D and 3D graphics during a period when the gaming industry was evolving from the classic 16-bit systems to the newer and more capable 32 and 64-bit consoles. Back in Part 1, we looked at the bare metal under the Jag's hood, which excelled in 2D graphics and expanded on what was possible with rendering 3D worlds. It's further worth noting that the Jag's GPU was one of the first on the market capable of generating a 24-bit true color palette of 16.8 million colors. This allowed for rich and vibrant images and is considered the standard for high-quality color in most digital media, even today. With 24-bit color depth, it could display a much wider range of colors, resulting in more accurate and realistic images. The increased precision of true color also enables smoother gradation between colors, reducing the appearance of banding and posterization in 2D images. In comparison, the 16-bit Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo were limited to just 512 and 32,000 colors respectively. The Jag's exponentially larger color palette far surpassed them both, and was capable of producing photorealistic 2D graphics. The only other console with a true color palette at that time was the 3DO, but let's also remember that system happened to cost nearly twice as much as the Jag at its release. The Jag also supported a higher screen resolution in its special VGA mode of up to 640 by 480 pixels, substantially higher than the 320 by 240 of the Genesis, or the even lower 256 by 224 on the Super Nintendo. The Jag's ability to display at a higher resolution was a great advantage in terms of overall image clarity and sharpness, but it's important to understand that not all games on the system were actually programmed to support it, due to the additional load it placed on the processor to render images at higher resolution. A final word on the hardware is the Jag's optional S-video cable that transmitted sharper and more vibrant images onto the screen compared to the older RGB composite connection used in earlier consoles. While the Jag default video output was the RGB connect, S-video capability was common in higher-end TVs and monitors back in the 90s, and provided a superior picture quality and more vivid colors and sharper images for those who had one. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into the games. The following is meant to illustrate a variety of the graphical finesse seen on the Jag, with a mix of both 2D and 3D titles. Our first game is the F1-inspired 3D racer Checkered Flag. This game was released in 1994 by the prolific Jag developer Rebellion. Similar to the Sega arcade game Virtua Racing, it was a good showcase of the console's 3D polygon capabilities. It features lightning-fast action and a smooth frame rate that was quite impressive for its time. The tracks are designed with interesting details, sharp corners, and long straightaways that maintained a consistent visual flow. The game's polygonal graphics provided a sense of depth and realism that was advanced for home consoles of its era, even though the cars and environments appear blocky by modern standards. Checkered Flag also introduced a weather system, allowing players the choice to adjust the appearance of the track with rain or fog effects, providing variety and further enhancing the visual experience. Despite the technological limitations of the era, Checkered Flag used the Jag's hardware to create an immersive 3D racing experience, offering visual depth and smooth racing environment that set it apart from many other racing games in the market back at the time. For our second title, we have a 2D entry, so you just know we've got to talk about Kasumi Ninja. Love it or hate it, this game has somehow gained a bit of a cult following, Visually, it's clear this game is trying to capitalize on the popularity of Mortal Kombat, but I'll be the first to admit the gameplay wasn't even close to being in the same league. Despite its poor controls and stiff gameplay, it does offer up some really sharp backgrounds that fully utilize the true color features of the system and are combined with some gorgeous parallax scrolling, which adds a nice looking illusion of depth. The game even presented a 3D dungeon of sorts to make the character selection mechanic more interesting. The digitized sprites of the fighters definitely have that cheesy 90s look, with exaggerated moves and over-the-top animations. And of course there's lots of blood splattering everywhere, and some gory fatalities to finish things off. But let's be clear, Kasumi Ninja's background environments are where this one really shines. Here are some of my favorites.
Round one.
Next up is Skyhammer, another open-world 3D shooter, also developed by Rebellion. You take control of a combat helicopter in an environment that mirrors the gritty urban aesthetic of the movie Blade Runner. The game is visually stunning, with detailed texture-mapped environments. The weapon effects and explosions are pretty sweet too, adding to the chaos of the battles. The 3D visuals here are quite impressive for the Jag, and it pulls off the full 6 degrees of control in a visually engaging package. It's important to note that this title had been in development during the Jag's original lifespan, but for a number of reasons, it was not actually released until the year 2000, after Atari had abandoned the system. Nevertheless, this is one of the best 3D open-world shooters on the console, and definitely worth a closer look.
Entering friendly zone.
And number 4 is Battlemorph, the much improved sequel to the Jag's pack-in cartridge Cybermorph. This space shooter pulls you in with its mix of arcade-style combat and immersive visuals. This game was only one of a handful of Jag CD titles that were actually released. Its 3D graphics are a solid improvement over its predecessor. The game's crisp polygon graphics and fluid animation make it really feel like you're zipping across alien landscapes. The short draw distances in the first game are a bit less jarring here. The neon colors and Guro shading make this one a looker. The freedom of movement and open-world gameplay made this addition to the library one that really impressed Jag fans in the mid-90s. It even featured the ability to pilot your ship seamlessly from in-atmosphere to diving underwater with some creative visual effects while submerged. Let's check it out. In the number 5 slot, we have got Val d'Isère skiing and snowboarding. If you're into winter sports, this game is an exhilarating blast of fresh air. It boasts forward-scrolling 2.5D graphics that are fast-paced with tight controls. The snow-covered mountains appear crisp and stunning, with nice terrain details and a smooth frame rate as you hurtle down the slopes. While the game's focus is speed and arcade thrills, it doesn't actually offer that much depth, but definitely captures the feeling of shredding down the mountainside with impressive visuals in its day. The game engine does a great job with sprite scaling and the track movement, and is the first game that I can recall with the rotating plane of the track, moving not only on a downhill axis, but also uphill as you power your way over some ridges in each course.
Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
Rounding up the batch for number 6, we've got Iron Soldier 2, the excellent follow-on effort that's got to be one of the most visually impressive titles on the Jag. The game was released on both cartridge and CD formats, with each version making substantial improvements to the overall visual presentation. This includes more detailed, complex environments and more texture-mapped polygon graphics that brought the world to life, making the combat even more satisfying. I've just gotta say, when you see those A-10s buzzing around doing their strafing runs against your mech, or watch an entire skyscraper blow up into thousands of pieces, it's pretty damn cool. Iron Soldier 2's improved frame rate and more responsive controls were also a step over the original. The destructible environment effects in particular are a real standout. Whether you're bringing down a building or blowing up vehicles, you just feel so powerful with even more pieces of shrapnel and chunks of debris raining down in the explosions. The action and open world environments are a prime example of peak gaming on the Jag. In my mind, this has got to be one of the best instances of how the system's power was truly harnessed, creating some amazing gameplay experiences. Now before we wrap things up, I want to provide an honorable mention and highlight one more title with great graphics, which is actually an unfinished game, but still a playable demo of Phase Zero. The game was sadly never released on the Jag during its original run, and is a three-dimensional blast-em-up played from a first-person perspective similar to Hover Strike. You step into a combat hovercraft skimming over a variety of destructible environments while bringing the fight to the enemies. Phase Zero's graphics were something really special since the developers used an innovative technique called height maps, which are similar to VOCLs, or volumetric pixels, that were popularized in the 1990s by the PC game Comanche. This method of rendering graphics allowed each landscape pixel to have its own elevation value to represent a specific height. The action here is intense, and when you blow apart enemy crafts, the explosion's transparency effects are pretty awesome looking. The demo itself was leaked online in the year 2000, and later in 2004, Songbird Studios re-released the demo on an actual Jag cartridges, complete with packaging mimicking the other officially licensed Jag releases. So kudos to Songbird Studios for making this available to Jag fans on the original hardware. So there you have it. While the Atari Jaguar's library may have been small relative to the competition, there's no doubt that some of its games packed a visual punch. Whether the detailed and colorful 2D worlds or the immersive 3D open world experiences, these games showcase the Jaguar's true power. each in their own creative and unique ways. The very fact there's still a loyal Jag fan base around the world, with numerous homebrew games and independent development that continues to this day, is a true testament to the console's enduring legacy and place in gaming history. But that's just what I think. Which games do you think had the best graphics? Are there any others that deserve a spot? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. If you're new here, I'd like to welcome you to the channel and invite you to subscribe for more feel-good retro gaming content. Alright everyone, this is the Retro Gaming Boss signing out, reminding you to keep the games old school. I really appreciate you watching and all your support, and I'll see you on the next one. One last word, especially for those who aren't Jaguar fans, I have just one thing to say about how I truly feel about this great retro console.
But I still love technology, always and forever, always and forever.